So you want to start collecting Disney Cars diecasts. What's a lenticular car, and how did that line get started? Hello everybody, welcome back to yet another video, and finally to a new installment of Collector's Guide. It's been entirely too long. I've of course been busy. I went on a break a few weeks ago. Then after that, since then I've just had review after review to make, and every day's just been packed with 2 videos, an episode, and a review. And now that the current Cars Adventures season is done, I can take a break and do some other stuff until the next one starts in a couple days. So finally, I do have some time to make a new episode of Collector's Guide. Of course, last time, way too long ago, I discussed my 3-part plan for 2009 and how I would discuss it on the show. Doing an episode on the main line, which I already released. Check that out if you haven't yet. Shameless plug. And then I'd also do an episode on the Storytellers line and an episode on Lenticulars, which I was debating whether I wanted to do one on what a lenticular is first and then do one on the history of lenticulars in 2009, but eventually I decided it would probably just be the best if I combined the two. So, I believe late into the 2009 year, it definitely wasn't a thing since the start, I don't believe. But in 2009, at a point in 2009, Mattel began to release lenticular cars. Now, these cars, also known as, due to the little bubble in the packaging, as "Look, my eyes change," do just that. Their eyes change. Depending on how you hold the car, what you're seeing changes. I only have a few lenticular cars. Here is my only 2009 car from the lenticular line, Sarge. I also have Mater with Oil Can here, who was a chase release in 2010. Of course, we'll get to the 2010 cars eventually. And J Limo. Now, as you could probably already tell, the lenticular cars caused a pretty big problem in the fact that you could see more eyes on the car than there should have been. Of course, it looks like Jay here has 3 eyes or 4 eyes, and McQueen, in my case, from whatever angle I look at him, here this is Paint Mask McQueen, almost always looks like he has 4 eyes. And the sad thing about the lenticular line is that a lot of cars were only ever released as lenticular. So, but it wasn't always that way with the eyes like that. So let's go back to 2009, where the first wave of cars were released, including just a ton of pre-released cars, now with this new gimmick. Anyway, guys, let's get started with the 3 points. Up first, the packaging. The packaging for these cars was quite simple. It was just that year's Race-O-Rama packaging, except the card, I believe, was a little shorter, and the Race-O-Rama logo was replaced with a huge thing that said, "Look, my eyes change." Now the bubble was accessible on both sides, so that if you turn the car around, you could still see it. Basically, the back was clear as well, making it an absolute pain to open these cars and preserve their packaging. But that way you could see the car from both sides, which was kind of a nice thing in case you wanted to make sure yours wasn't damaged in any capacity. Moving on, though, from the package. By the way, the backs became almost completely blank now. There was barely anything on them. Anyway, though, let's move on to what's new, which I kind of already covered. But in the case of these lenticulars, the original year here, in 2009, cars were released like this. Instead of having 2 different facial expressions, they would simply blink, a gimmick which really doesn't work too well. If my Sarge here is any example, it really doesn't work all that well. But Mattel just released so many of these, and it took them until 2010 to start doing the dual expression thing. Notable releases for this year for these cars include just a whole ton of McQueens, like 5 or 6 different versions of McQueen, 2 Docs, 4 Ramones, 2 Maters, Sarge here, Fillmore, and just a couple of each car. almost all major characters got a lenticular release this year. In fact, to this day, the only car to not become a lenticular release was Lizzie from the main cast of Radiator Springs. Mattel even began to get a little obscure by releasing Ryan Shields' Viewzine as a lenticular car here, eventually bringing them down a path that would just eventually lead to the demise of the lenticular line. But we'll cover that eventually during the 2010 segment of Diecast History. Anyway, guys, thank you all so much for watching. Sorry if this episode had a bit lower quality than usual. Of course, I'm just getting back into releasing Diecast History episodes. I'll see you guys next time. Bye now.